Hi, Janet. Hi, Dr. Lu Hong. It's 8 o'clock, 8:01. Shall we start?
Yes.
Okay, great. I will do a brief introduction and then I'll pass on to Janet. Okay. Hello, everyone. This is Jin Zhaoli again, Cambridge China Center's director. I'm very happy to see so many friends here. I can see Hugh and Jane from Portugal joining us. They make their own wines as well. Martin Jelly from Sussex, Duncan from Edinburgh, many friends from Cambridge, London, all around the UK, and a few from abroad as well. Thank you all very much for joining us for a Note Mandarin Wine Club online wine webinars. This is hosted by Cambridge China Center, the Institute for Confucius for Business London, and Wine Peak. A Note Mandarin Wine webinars are hosted bi-weekly on Sundays, focusing on history, culture, and of course, nice wines. Today is a very special day. It's 25th October, but on lunar calendar, it's the 9th of September, the 9th of the ninth month, and it's called Double Ninth Festival, 重阳节. So today, Janet will talk about 重阳节, the Double Ninth Festival, and also mainly talking about two wonderful wine regions in China, Shandong and Shanxi provinces. Without further ado, I'll pass on to Janet. The webinar for most of the session, our audience, you will be muted, your sound and video. But for the later part, when we do the tasting, we'll active all the sound and video so we can chat and sharing your opinions on the wine. Okay, let's welcome Janet.
Thank you, Jin Zhao. Thank you, Dr. Lu. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Mandarin Wine Club. And today we are going to start our virtual tasting. So for those of you who have got the wines, we can basically start doing some tasting while I talk about the wine regions. So today, as Jin Zhao said, we're doing Shandong and Shanxi. Shandong is really where the modern Chinese wine industry started, whereas Shanxi is perhaps a more traditional and historical wine region. So both of them have a long history of winemaking, as you will see later. So just a quick reminder for those of you who might be new, or we are starting our virtual tasting today. So the format is that you can get a mixed case of Chinese wines from different regions. And from today and the subsequent sessions, we will be going through two of the regions represented by this mixed case. So we can have a taste of the wine and learn about the region, learn about the culture of those regions. So that's the format. And today, the first wine, which I have here, this bottle, is from Shandong province, a Syrah blend, and followed by Shanxi province, which is a Pinot Noir. So for those of you who have the wines, feel free to open either of them or both if you're with friends and family. I know some of you are joining tonight with friends and family, even with Chinese meal. I got some really lovely messages and emails asking, what sort of Chinese meal to get with the wines tonight. So it's all very, very exciting. So whether you're enjoying the wines by yourself or with friends and family, or simply just listening to the session, you're all very welcome. And I'm very excited that tonight we'll be able to do some virtual tasting together. So when we talk about Shandong and Shanxi, a quick note on the language. So Shan in Chinese means mountain, right? So Shandong means literally mountain east, whereas Shanxi means mountain west. So the first question we should address is, which mountain are we talking about? So in the modern geographical divide of the Chinese map, the mountain in question here is Taihangshan, right? So Taihangshan, the west of Taihangshan is Shanxi province. And to the east of Taihangshan, there's actually Hebei province and Shandong province. But historically, Shandong was a much larger, wider region, but the name has subsequently stuck. So although it's not strictly adjacent to Taihangshan anymore, but we still call this province Shandong province, and loosely it's to the east of Taihangshan. So Taihangshan is, as you can see, very beautiful significant mountain ranges, and one of the significant Taoist cultural site. So a lot of people go there not just for the scenery, but also for its rich heritage steeped in Taoism, for example. So it's a very important spiritual site, as well as a beautiful range of natural beauty. But historically, the concept of where this mountain range actually lie was quite fluid. So in historical time, when we talk about the mountain that divides Shandong and Shanxi, we used to use Huashan as a dividing line. So to the east of Huashan would be called Shandong. And quite confusingly, if we use Huashan as a dividing point, then the current present-day Shanxi province would actually be part of Shandong. So that's a point to remember. And why this is relevant for today, as you will see later, we will talk about a poem about the Double Nine Festival. And in the title, the poem mentions Shandong, but actually the poet from Tang Dynasty at that time, Shandong actually included the Shanxi province of today. So Huashan, again, a sacred mountain of China, known as the most dangerous hike under heaven. As you can see, it is beautiful, but some part of the mountain is very dangerous. It's quite nerve-wracking to actually climb. So Huashan, again, a spiritual and sacred mountain to the west of China. So moving on to this poem, as I mentioned, it's dedicated to today, the festival of Chongyang, which is the Double Ninth Festival. So in the Chinese lunar calendar, today is the 9th of September. Right? So 9th of September was a historical festival where people would go hiking. They would go climb mountains to enjoy autumn scenery, the changing color of the leaves, to admire chrysanthemum, for example. So this poem by Wang Wei was written in the Tang Dynasty to commemorate the festival of the Double Nine. And he says, the title of the poem is, on the 9th of September, I recall my brothers in Shandong. But here, Shandong, he actually means Shanxi, right? So slight confusion, point of confusion for us today. So Chongyang Chong means double. Yang actually means the sun, or yin yang. If you hear yin yang, so yang represents the light, the sun, etc. So why is it called Double Yang Festival? It's because the number 9 in Chinese is a yang number. So we call odd numbers yang numbers, and even numbers yin numbers. So 9 is the largest single digit yang number, right? So double 9 basically in Chinese is Double Yang Festival, right? So Chongyang Jie. And 9 is being the largest yang number, also is the most sort of sacred and powerful number. Therefore, it's the number that is used by emperors, right? Throughout Chinese history, a lot of the number symbolism used by emperors are associated with the number 9. And also, interestingly, 9, 9 in Chinese is also homophone to the word for longevity or length, right? 9. and also with wine, right? So they're all pronounced 酒. So this is quite interesting. So 重阳节 also became a festival to celebrate the elderly, right? To pay respect to elderlies, to wish them longevity, right? Because 酒 sounds exactly the same as longevity, right? And also 酒, wine, the stuff we drink. So on this festival, often people would wear cornel flowers or admire chrysanthemum. So they are all flowers which are in season. Cornel, the berries can be made into wine and tonic. Similarly, chrysanthemum wine is often drunk around this time. So typically these flowers and berries in season will be infused with rice wine, and enjoyed around this time as a seasonal drink. Because cornel flowers, for example, have medicinal properties. It's good for the health. It's in season, so the wine is considered a tonic wine, a health-giving wine, which is suitable again for to give to elderlies, to pay respect to parents and grandparents. So that's sort of the background of the festival. And back to this poem, right? So this poem describes Wang Wei on the festival of the Double Nine. He was away from his hometown. So he wrote this poem saying, I am alone as a foreign guest in a foreign land. My yearning for home multiplies around the festival times. Knowing my brothers are climbing high, some faraway place, all wearing cornel flowers but one. So he's in a way commemorating and remembering his family, his brothers, saying, on this day I alone am far away from home, but I know that my brothers will be out hiking, climbing high to examine the beautiful autumn scenery. And they will all be wearing cornel flowers, but one person is missing, and that is the poet himself. So this is a very famous poem to commemorate this festival. So now we go to Shandong, right? So Shandong, a very important province in China on the fairly fertile and prosperous eastern coast of China. With 100 million people, and the provincial capital being Jinan. So Shandong is very important in the modern Chinese wine industry. It has over 140 wineries and producing 40% of China's total wine production these days. And as you can see, it's a peninsula. So it's influenced by a maritime climate with the East Asian monsoon influence. So I'll talk a little bit about that in terms of how that impacts the wine of Shandong. So a closer look at Shandong. So the most famous wine regions are essentially this Jiaodong Peninsula bit that sticks out into the Bohai Sea and Yellow Sea. Right? So the main regions, I guess, if you're going to remember one or two, it will be Yantai area, with Penglai being a sub-region within Yantai, are probably the most prominent fine wine producing regions of Shandong, and also some made in Qingdao as well. Of course, Qingdao is famous for the beer, right? Qingdao Pijiu, founded in 1903 as a German-British joint venture at the time. As you may know, Shandong being a very important strategic port location, it was under the influence of Germans, British, and Japanese during the period of occupation, and therefore Qingdao beer was founded when Shandong was occupied predominantly by the Germans, and that's probably the most well-known one of the most well-known international brands of China today. So if you have the wines, I would recommend that you can make a start on the first wine that we're tasting, which is Treaty Port, from Treaty Port Vineyards in Shandong province. So back to this map. So it's from Penglai, this area highlighted in yellow. So Treaty Port Vineyard is is very interesting. It's founded by an English gentleman actually called Chris Ruffle, and he studied Chinese Mandarin at Oxford University, and then he subsequently lived and worked in China for many years, decades, and then he decided that he wanted to build a vineyard in Shandong province. And he decided on choosing Penglai. So in 2005, he built a Scottish castle in this part of Penglai, which has historically shown to have good potential for winemaking. So the region around Penglai, it has some similarity to the world-renowned Medoc region of Bordeaux, right? So it shares this maritime climate with the sea influence. It also has, in part, have this gravelly soil, which is, again, in Medoc, in Bordeaux, some of the best properties have this gravelly type of soil. So that allows for a very characterful wines and good drainage, which is important in areas where you might occasionally get monsoon. Right? So here's some more pictures from the vineyard. Very interestingly, inside Chris's vineyard, there's a Taoist temple dedicated to a Taoist master, Master Changchun, right? Master Eternal Spring. So that's why this wine we're tasting today, this Syrah blend, is called the Philosopher. So this wine is dedicated to this Taoist master Changchun, whose temple is actually in the vineyard itself. So it's a very interesting place. I highly recommend, if you're in Shandong, go and visit Chris's Scottish castle. And they have hospitality. You can live in you can stay in the castle. You can eat and taste the wines there as well. So it's a very, very interesting aspect of tourism that's opening up in China, in these wine regions. And speaking of Taoism, and you might know in China we are we often make toasts, right, during banquets, and especially the Taoist school, they promote the state of drunkenness as one that is desirable. It's the state where we are most natural and we are open and honest and we're most friendly. So Taoists tend to promote the state of drunkenness as one that represents the natural state and the state that's closest to higher truths, I suppose, right? So philosophers, poets, literates, they do tend to want to get quite drunk before they start feeling inspirations for poetry, etc. So in Shandong province, I will have to warn you, if you ever go to Shandong province and find yourself in a banqueting situation, be warned that the people of Shandong would absolutely drink you under the table before they will let you go. Shandong province is famous for having the most drunken banquets in China, right? So be prepared if you're ever in Shandong and find yourself eating out. You will be expected to toast people and to receive toasts. And every time you're toasted, you are kind of expected to drink all of the contents in your wine glass. So one trick is never to fill your wine glass too full because you will be toasted throughout the night. So there's one little useful tip for when you're going to Shandong. So some famous people from Shandong, Confucius probably would be the number one famous person from Shandong, and also Mencius. So the Confucian school is, of course, Confucius is the founding father of Confucianism, but also Mencius as well, and he's also from Shandong province. And another famous person is, of course, Sun Tzu is famous for as the author of The Art of War, right? So again, a famous person from Shandong. And also we have a lady called Li Qingzhao, who is probably China's most celebrated female poet. Li Qingzhao is also from Shandong. And what's very interesting about Li Qingzhao is that she loves wine. A lot of her poetry contains sentiments, after she's drunk wine, she's feeling happy or she's feeling lonely, etc. And one of her very famous poems is actually dedicated to the Double Ninth Festival, in which she talks about drinking alone chrysanthemum wines on the day of the Double Ninth Festival and feeling lonely and feeling that she has become thinner than the chrysanthemum flower because of her loneliness and sadness. So she is a very prominent poet who wrote a lot of wine poetry as well. So there are lots of places of interest in Shandong, but I'll just quickly mention two UNESCO World Heritages. One is based in Qufu, which is the Confucius Temple and Tomb Complex, Kongmiao, right? So this is where Confucius is buried along with 100,000 of his descendants. So it's a very vast complex of temples and tombs dedicated to his entire clan. And it's also a place of rich resources. There are lots of archives, lots of scrolls, scripts, especially from the Ming and Qing dynasty. So it's a center for, it's a spiritual center, of course, but also a great center for learning, for learning about Confucianism, but also just about Chinese history. So definitely highly recommended if you are visiting Shandong. And of course, Taishan, Mount Tai, is the most sacred mountain in China. It's a mountain that's been worshipped by emperors throughout history, since probably Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor to unite all China. Once he united all of China, he started this precedence of worshipping Mount Tai to show heaven his achievement. So subsequently, if an emperor feels that he can go and worship Mount Tai, it means he has confidence in his rule, right? And very few emperors of China actually felt that he was worthy of worshipping Mount Tai, right? So this is certainly the most sacred mountain in Chinese history. And of course, an area of outstanding beauty as well. So if we talk about Shandong wine, we have to also talk about the birth of the modern Chinese wine industry in Shandong province as part of this westernization movement, 洋务运动, which occurred at the end of the Qing dynasty, towards the end of the Qing dynasty. So this was a period where certain factions of the imperial family and the government realized that they needed to study and learn about Western technology, industry, and economy. So as part of that, a lot of machinery, tools, sciences were imported into China. And as part of that process, an industrialized winery was built in Shandong province, in Yantai, right? And that was Zhang Yu, so Changyu, as we call it in the Wade Giles rendition. So Changyu was founded in 1892 and marked the start of the modern wine industry in China. And with the founding of Changyu, the founder called Zhang Bishi, he imported over 120 European grape varieties to Shandong and to find out which grape would suit the Shandong, the soil and the climate. And as a result of that process, he favored a particular grape called Cabernet Grenache. So Cabernet Grenache is actually Carmener. Carmener, they did some DNA test and found that it's actually genetically identical to Carmener. But Cabernet Grenache was the name that became known in China. And we think it's a misspelling of the German phrase Cabernet gemischt, which means mixed Cabernet. But they misspelled the M with N. So Cabernet Grenache just became this rather strange name for Carmener. And that is still in use today. So whenever we talk about Carmener in China, we would call it Cabernet Grenache. And in Chinese, it's 蛇龙珠. So today, Cabernet Grenache is still widely planted, in particular in Shandong province. And Changyu, one of the Changyu's flagship wine, is made mainly with this grape. So Changyu being, the historical winery of China, it also built one of the Asia's oldest and largest, for a long time, the largest wine cellar in Asia. So this Changyu wine cellar is still, part of the museum today, and you can still see some very old barrels. And another property of note is Longdai, Domaine de Longdai, and this is the property built by Domaine Baron de Rothschild. Of course, their most famous wine is Lafite, right? So Longdai is basically Lafite of China, right? So Longdai is also Penglai, and actually it's Chris's neighbor. So Longdai is made right next to Chris's vineyard as well. So Longdai is very interesting because, as I mentioned earlier, there are some similarity between the Medoc of Bordeaux and Penglai of China, right? In terms of the climate condition, and in parts the soil composition as well. And Zhang Bishi, of Changyu, also the reason why he decided to build the first industrialized winery of China in Yantai was also related to a story about Bordeaux. So he was once at an embassy function, a British embassy function, with some diplomats, and they served Bordeaux wine at this function. And during the conversation during the evening, a French diplomat jokingly said, when some of our soldiers, they actually love Shandong, they want to stay here and make wine. We found some wild grapes around Yantai, and I'm sure they are just as good as the wine, the grapes of Bordeaux, and you can probably make wine here. And we can just all become winemakers. So from this sort of half-joking conversation, Zhang Bishi actually took note and went out to Yantai and did some soil analysis, did some study around the Yantai region. And he actually, based on that conversation, decided, why not? If I'm going to build a winery, I will do it in Yantai. So there are all these historical ties and stories and studies done around Penglai, around Shandong area. And there are certainly some resemblance to Bordeaux, to the Medoc in particular. And one thing that's quite interesting to me, I think, is the fact that Penglai has also started this initiative, which is essentially a G7 of world coastal wine regions. So Penglai, of course, counted itself as one of the 7. But the other 7, as you can see, Medoc of Bordeaux, again, coastal region. Also Tuscany in Italy, Cape Town in South Africa, Barossa Valley of Australia, Napa Valley of California, and Casablanca Valley of Chile. So the region, so the Penglai Initiative decided to start this sort of a group of 7 world coastal wine regions, and they would meet for forums to discuss winemaking techniques, to exchange ideas, and formulate to promote coastal wine. So coastal wine is interesting because what the sea does is to moderate temperature. So what you will find usually a wine region with maritime influences is that the seasons, although they're distinct. So for example, in Penglai, you have very distinct seasons, but the winters are not too harsh. You know, the winters are fairly mild. The summers are not too scorching hot. And also the day to night temperature differences are also less drastic, you know. So water, bodies of water, and especially oceans and seas have this moderating effect on the climate, right? And some people would say, you know, wines from these coastal regions, they have interesting development because what happens is that, for example, a more temperate change of temperature and weather conditions would allow flavors to develop in a more complex way, right? So the acidity can develop into more flavor profiles, for example. So, and also one feature which is important to China is that with a milder winter, the vines do not need to be buried underground, because in a lot of parts of northern China, when the winter is too harsh, a lot of these vines will have to be buried with earth and dig up again in the springtime. So that's very labor intensive, and also it's quite traumatizing for the vines as well to be buried and dug up, every year, right? So in Shandong province, you don't need to do that because the winter is fairly mild. So what that means is that these vines will have the potential to grow fairly old, right? So older vines can possibly produce more characterful, more complex wines in the long run, right? So being a region with this potential to produce older wines of the future will make Penglai quite an interesting wine region to watch in terms of the ageability and the complexity of the wines produced from Shandong province. So that's an advantage of Shandong. The mild winter is certainly an advantage, but the slight disadvantage is that it is influenced by the Eastern Asia monsoon season. So occasionally you might get damage due to heavy rain, right? Usually, because Shandong province have some mountain ranges in the south and in the center, so usually it does protect this peninsula area from very, very heavy rainfall. So usually the raining season is short. It's during the summer, but it's fairly short. And then you have a nice period of hot summer, sunny period during the summer, so the grapes can ripen well, right? So summer can be quite good if you don't have terrible rain due to the monsoon. What that means is the vintage variation from Shandong could be quite great, depending on how the climate, how the weather plays out. You know, the condition from year to year can be quite different. And that would, again, impart on the wine quality and the character of the wine, right? So vintage variation is quite important in Shandong province. And how about the food? So Shandong also is called Lu. This area historically was a kingdom of Lu. So sometimes we call Shandong Lu. So Lu Cai is the cuisine of Shandong. Lu Cai is, you may know, China has 8 great regional cuisines. There's a classification system. And Shandong cuisine is one of the 8, and arguably the oldest one as well out of the 8. So Lu Cai, there are a lot of braising as a technique. And Lu Cai, what they emphasis is this savory umami type of profile, right? So a lot of use of dark soya sauce. So using soya sauce and salty savoriness to bring out depth of flavor, to bring out umami characters in the dishes. So there's also, being the coastal region, it has great seafood as well as, pork and rich meat, even dishes, vegetable dishes like tofu, etc. You still want this fairly decadent texture, with sauces, with silky or smooth sauces that is savory and has depth of flavors, right? So with Lu cuisine, this wine from Chris's Vineyard, I think would go quite nicely with it, or a Cabernet Garnished from Shandong province. What you want to do when you're doing Lu cuisine with wine pairing is that you don't want harsh tannins. You don't want too very alcoholic wine. What you want is softer fruitier profile, sort of medium-bodied wine, because the sauces and the texture and the weight of the dishes are sort of fairly substantial in Lu cuisine. So you want a medium-bodied wine with fruity, fruit-forward characters, with silky and soft tannins, and not too alcoholic. So that's what I would recommend with wine pairing. And I think for those of you who have this wine, I hope you would agree that the fruitiness and the soft tannin of this wine would go quite nicely with this type of food. Okay, so now we're moving on to Shanxi province. Shanxi province is a landlocked province in the north of China, and its provincial capital is Taiyuan. So Taiyuan is a historical wine region and fairly famous, producing rather good quality wines. And even Marco Polo, in his diary, mentioned Taiyuan as a wine region, making great wines, and the wines of Taiyuan were being sent to the capital. So that's a historical point of interest. But Shanxi province is also famous for being part of the Loess Plateau. So the Loess Plateau is, to me, a very exciting terroir of China for the future. Being a landlocked province, it's a continental, it has continental climate characters, but it's still influenced by the eastern monsoon, right? So, which means that sometimes you have rain and humidity in the summer. So back to Loess Plateau. So Loess is a type of fine silt that's being carried by the wind, right? So the Loess from this region that covers an area of 400,000 square kilometers in China, covers Shanxi, not just Shanxi province, but its neighboring Shanxi province and part of Ningxia as well. And this is silt carried by the northwesterly wind from the Mongolian desert. So this type of silt is much finer than even sand, right? So and they just get swept up by the wind and then get deposited on this vast area with an elevation of 1,200 meters on average, and with an average thickness of the loess between 50 to 80 meters. And some parts, the thicker parts, can get up to 200 meters plus, right? So the second wine that we're tasting is from this Loess Plateau type of soil, which is a portion of it is over 200 meters deep. And the Loess Plateau, Huangtu Gaoyuan, in China, is the largest and deepest loess landform in the world. Right, so it's definitely a very interesting feature for the wine of Shanxi province. So if you're having this second wine, the Pinot Noir, please feel free to have a taste. So this comes from Rongzi Winery. So there's a story about Rongzi. The name of this winery is quite interesting. So Rongzi, so Shanxi province in the spring and autumn period belongs to a kingdom called Jing. So Rongzi was the mother of a very famous king of Jing, so Jing Wengong. Jing Wengong's mother was a sort of a tribal princess from a at the time a foreign tribe, right? So it was a mixed race marriage, really. So this exotic foreign tribal princess married Jing Xiangong, and their son Jing Wengong was a very famous king of the spring-autumn period. This was first millennium BCE. And Rongzi, this famous lady, legend has it that she used to make wine from grapes, because from her homeland, which was part of the Silk Road, later on it became the part of the Silk Road, but at the time it was just a region where wild grapes were found and was used to make wine. So there was a legend that one day Rongzi went out with some girlfriends and they went to pick wild grapes, but they picked too much and they couldn't carry them all. So they buried the grapes that they couldn't carry in a leather container, and they buried it to be retrieved on a different day. But when they returned to retrieve the grapes, they found that the grapes have started to ferment. The juices have started to ferment, and they tasted it, and it was delicious. So they inadvertently made wine, through natural fermentation. And ever since then, Rongzi started to make wine. So she was one of the earliest female winemakers of that region. And then Shanxi eventually was also part of the Silk Road, and Taiyuan also had this history of making sort of wine with with a Western style, which is through natural fermentation, as opposed to the more inland winemaking techniques of using rice and grain-based ingredients plus grapes, right? So around Shanxi and around the Silk Road, around this region, the Western natural fermentation of just grapes were the predominant way of making wine. So this is a lovely picture of the winery of Rongzi, which is built in a classic Chinese style. And this picture shows you the loess soil of the vineyard is planted on loess soil, which is 200 meters deep in parts. And why is loess soil interesting? So for starters, it's very fine, so it allows the root system of the vine to go very, very deep. You can imagine, with the vine, if the root system can go deep, it accesses a lot of different profiles of the soil, and it accesses different nutrients from the soil, and that could arguably impart interesting characters to the grapes, to the fruit, and then obviously eventually to the wine. Right, so deep root system of the vine can produce interesting wines because of the way it sucks up nutrients and water. And also, this type of soil is richer in calcium carbonate, which retains good acidity in the wine. So if you've been listening to my previous talks, you would probably have remembered that we talked a lot about the importance of acidity in wine. It brings out freshness. It gives this dimension and body and liveliness to the wine. So acidity is very, very important in good wine, and as part of this balance, to balance against sweetness and alcohol and tannins. Is part of the balance of wine, is to have good natural balanced acidity, right? So this area and elsewhere in the world where there's low plateau, you tend to find rather fresher profiles in the wine, and sometimes with good acidity. Other famous low wine regions for you to compare, perhaps Austria, Germany, or have parts of a famous low soil. Austria, notably along the Danube River, Wagram, and Hungary, Tokaj region, where it's famous for a dessert wine, right? Tokaj, again, have parts of the Tokaj landscape is also low space. In the U.S., in Oregon, for example, there are some very interesting, very famous Pinot Noir as well. Like this Rongzi, which is a Pinot Noir wine. In Oregon, you also have other examples of Pinot Noir made, produced on low space soil as well. So that would be an interesting comparison. Right, so some famous people from Shanxi province. So Wu Zetian, she was the only self-proclaimed female emperor of China. Right, so we've had many female rulers ruling China as dowager empresses, or but she was the only one who had the audacity to declare herself emperor of China. So Wu Zetian is very, very famous in Chinese history as the only proclaimed female emperor. Di Renjie is sort of like, he was a minister who served Wu Zetian actually. And he is also, he was famous in popular culture. He was almost like a Sherlock Holmes of China, a great detective as well as a politician. And then we have Wang Wei. We met him earlier with a poem about the Double Ninth Festival that was written by Wang Wei, commemorating his brothers and his hometown of Shanxi. And again, among the many beautiful places to visit, there are two of the UNESCO World Heritages in Shanxi province, one being the Yungang Grotto in Datong. So this showcase when Buddhism, the influence of Buddhism came into China. And in Yungang Grotto, you have 51,000 statues, Buddhist statues, carved into 252 caves, right? So it really showcased the development of the Buddhist art during the 5th and the 6th century in China. It's very, very striking, very stunning. And then you have Pingyao Gucheng, which is a ancient city, very well preserved 14th century traditional Han city. So you can see how the town is planned and laid out and almost preserved in very good condition. And also interestingly, Pingyao was a major banking center of China, especially during the 19th up to the 20th century as well. So Pingyao Guchen and Yungang Shiku, they're both UNESCO World Heritage Sites. Another vineyard of note in Shanxi province is Grace Vineyard in Taigu, which is quite close to Taiyuan. So Grace Vineyard is very notable. So in Shanxi province, Shanxi is not currently a major wine region of China, but it's made famous mainly by Grace Vineyard and Rongzi Vineyard. These two are really the flag bearers of Shanxi province. Grace Vineyard is also one of the earliest privately owned, like family-owned vineyard of China, founded in 1997, and it was family-owned. That was, very rare back in the 90s. So Grace Vineyard, if you have the chance to try their wines, also extremely fine examples of Chinese wine and of the Shanxi province. So as I mentioned earlier, Shanxi belonged to the kingdom of Jing, right? So Shanxi food is Jingcai. Jingcai. So in this part of China, they do lamb particularly well. And the lamb, the meat usually is very fresh, very gently cooked. So it falls off the bone, very succulent. It's almost like a white meat. Sometimes the lamb would be almost like a white meat. So very delicate meat, which means that it could go quite nicely with this Pinot Noir, right? The delicate, succulent, and gentle cooking of lamb would be rather suitable to pair with a nice light, fruity, berry-driven red wine with soft tannins. And another famous dish of the region is called you mian juan. So Shanxi is also famous for all types of noodles, right? In particular, you mian juan is very famous. It's a noodle roll, really, with almost like a bolognese sauce, right? Rich tomato-based sauce with chopped vegetable or sometimes a bit of minced meat as well. So it's almost like a bolognese with spaghetti bolognese, really, but Chinese Shanxi style, right? And again, this dish would go very well with the Pinot Noir because you have this, because the rich tomato sauce is quite herbaceous. And what you find in the Shanxi example of Pinot Noir is that apart from the gentle fruit, the juicy, fresh red fruit character, you also have a bit of this pepperiness, a slightly herbal dimension to it. And I think that would go rather nicely with the slightly umami character of tomato sauce. Okay, so I'm going to pause there and welcome everybody to comment on the wines. If you're tasting the wines, I'm going to start tasting the wines as well. And we can perhaps have a bit of an interactive session in terms of how you find the wines and what are you drinking with, if you're drinking it with food or, basically what you're doing and, what's your opinion of the wines. So I think Jinjiao has opened up everybody's Zoom. So anybody can join us and can unmute the mic and any comments or just type in the comment boxes or Q&A boxes.
There we are.
Hi, Martin. I see Martin. Hello.
Very, very good. Very, very good. Enjoying it very much.
Excellent. So I'm gonna open up this screen so I can see as many of you as possible.
Me in the middle.
So I know some of you are having a Chinese meal with the wines tonight.
Martin.
Oh, hi, Bill.
Hi, Bill.
Hello, it's lovely to see everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really good. Yeah, it's brilliant. Yeah, so yeah, let me know what you find in wine. So generally, I think Chinese wines. Well, the thing about the Syrah, right? The Syrah, as you know, Syrah is quite a global grape. Depending on where you grow it, they can display very different characters. For example, you can, in the New World, where they call it Shiraz, Australian Barossa Valley Shiraz, and they could be quite jammy and very, very fruity. Whereas this, I think, is more delicate, isn't it? It's a fresher, gentler type of fresh red berries and raspberry notes, with a little bit of pepperiness, I suppose. Very fine tannins. So it's very much a food wine, in my opinion. Hello, Kirsten. So yeah, yeah.
We have Bill next to me. We have this Shandong winery, the wine from the Treaty Port vineyards ready, and also
Chris is there. Hi, Chris.
we have the book ready as well.
Chris, you should say something about your wine.
Yeah, no, it's very good.
Very good. Well, I'm glad you like it.
The winemaker.
All right.
So Chris is the winemaker and the owner of
2016 was the best year we've had for the Syrah grape,
Right.
and we tend to do a blend each year, and then whichever varietal does well, we produce a specific wine for that. And 2016 was the Syrah.
Yeah. Yeah. In Shandong, you have this vintage variation that plays quite a
big variation. So our good years so far have been 2014, 2016, 2018 have been the best ones. But we have had some years where if it rains too much during the summer, it's not so good.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the thing with Shandong. It can't. You have to pray for good weather in the summer. Yeah.
But at least, as you said, we don't have to bury the vines, which is a huge. My competitors in the west of China have to do, and that's a huge expense.
Yeah, exactly. So how about the vintage this year, Chris? What's your initial thought? So. Okay.
Yeah, we had a bit too much rain in August. So we're actually still, the whites are not bad, they're already in, but the reds we're still picking, and we'll probably pick we'll try and span it out for another couple of weeks.
Okay, right. Well, good luck with that. Yeah, because when you're picking, you really do need to pray for good weather. So
that's the good thing about, we tend to have a very nice dry fine autumn. And that's the saving grace in the Shandong area.
So it's early summer, isn't it? Where
July is always usually the tricky month.
Yeah.
I know you've got some Petit Verdot in this wine with the Syrah. How much Petit Verdot have you got in there? What's the percentage?
In that one, it's relatively low, and we use the Petit Verdot for the colour.
Right. Okay.
But we do produce one wine called the Prince, which is largely Petit Verdot,
right.
with an unusual varietal we have called Arananoa.
Right.
And that's actually, so far, is my best-selling wine, the Prince from 2016 and 2018. So the French look down me. When I say I'm making a wine from Petit Verdot, they look at me askance. But it's a different climate, a different soil, and I think it tastes interesting.
Yeah. That's the thing with China. The soil is different, the climate is different, so grapes would express different characters. So it's an open playing field. There's no rule book, right?
Yeah, we have a few friends tasting this wine and also the Rongzi wine as well. Martin and Jelly and with Martin and Judy and friends there. Which one are you tasting?
Yeah, we're quite amazed how good the wines are. We're enjoying it very much.
Yeah.
How long have you been there, Chris?
About 35 years.
Oh wow! Oh, you might like it soon.
A long time. So I've seen a few changes.
Very good.
Yeah, Chris is he speaks fluent Chinese and knows China probably better than a lot of Chinese people, because the process of building a vineyard in sort of rural China, it's
not easy.
Not easy at all.
Yeah.
So,
Chris, can I ask a question? How much of your wine do you actually export, and how much is actually sold within China itself?
It's mainly for the domestic market but I'm English, and so I export it so far just to the UK.
Yeah.
I do it through the Real Wine Company and recently winebuyers.com, so 2 online distributors who distribute it. My aim is to get into the Chinese restaurants in the UK who currently miss out on the wine margin.
Yeah. It's very true. Yeah.
And we have Hugh and Jane from Portugal. They've been there for years, and I heard that you have friends from Canada and Australia with you.
We do.
Hello.
Oh.
And although they are drinking their own wine, we don't stick to
Portuguese and Alfreshera 2017 with you.
Yeah, excellent. Unfortunately, we can only send the wines in to UK addresses. But yes, but as long as you're enjoying.
Pleasure to meet another winemaker.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Yes. So, how about the Pinot Noir? What do you think of? Because of course, Pinot Noir is a difficult grape, right? It's a very difficult grape.
I thought the nose on the Pinot Noir was amazing. Yeah. I think whether we should have opened the bottle a little earlier than we did,
right?
May make a bit of a difference. Bill, are you drinking this?
No, but I've tried it before. Yeah, I think it's very good, to be honest.
Yeah.
I was quite impressed
I like
with it, actually.
Yeah, we had the Rongzi Pinot Noir last year at a concert and at the reception session. Very well popular. Yeah.
Good.
So Leanna says, absolutely spot on. It's it has a very, very lovely nose of strawberries, fresh strawberries. But what I like about this Pinot Noir is also that sometimes Pinot Noir can get quite watery. It's trying to balance the delicacy, but then it kind of loses a bit of the body. But I thought this Pinot Noir has quite lovely length and a bit of body, quite good, as well as the layers of fresh berries and fruits. So it's pretty well made Pinot Noir, considering it's a very very difficult grape. Anyone right around the world. So and Pinot Noir is not produced much in China at all. So
You couldn't do it in our area.
No, not in Shandong.
No, the skin is too thin. It splits too easily.
Exactly. So so this is a very, very good effort, really, from China, and commercially available Pinot Noir from China. I think the only one I know of, actually. I haven't tasted any other Pinot Noir from China. Yeah, so this is quite a special one as well.
Yeah. If I go back to Chris, I like the label, how you put I think it's very, good. The treat you put down here, and also the
philosopher
thing. Yeah, I thought that was very good, actually.
Yeah, thank you.
Where are you drinking?
It's an interesting historical area, and so all of my wine labels use figures from Chinese history.
Yeah,
that's very striking.
Yeah.
And I see in your book you've got a black taxi London cab. Have you still got it?
I do. They're actually now assembled outside Shanghai.
All right.
So we use it to pick up guests from the airport when they're coming to stay at the hotel.
Okay. What's the price to London from there?
Yes, that'd be quite expensive, sir.
Yeah, very good. Yeah.
How are you, Yanping? Are you in London? I think you're muted.
Sorry, who?
Yanping.
Hi.
Hello, Yanping.
Yeah, we're in London, and this is my husband. We are tasting.
Yeah, we really enjoyed the wine.
Really
very
lovely.
Yeah.
We think it's so nice. Just we can just enjoy on its own. It's not sharp, and you can enjoy with a meal. We actually had it. Was it yesterday?
Yeah.
With a meal, half bottle, and save half bottle of this today. Yeah, and also we opened a new one of this. Yeah, it was quite nice. Yeah.
Great. Kirsten, hi. What did you think of the wine? Unmute yourself, please.
Yeah, so I didn't open the second one. I just opened the first one because I'm by myself.
Wow. Yes, exactly. I think that's sensible.
Too much wine otherwise. But yeah, it's really good. Really enjoying it. Diana was saying it's very smooth, and I agree.
Exactly. They're very, they've got smooth tannin, smooth profile. So very good with food or just easy drinking. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's been so lovely. It's really enjoyed the talk.
There's a question. This is a question for Chris and the wine maker. Through this webinar, we quite interesting to visit your vineyard in China. I just wonder how best we can do it. I come from Zhuhai. My parents, and used to live. I mean, because they all gone now, and so we usually visit Zhuhai, and how we like to visit Shandong. How best we can visit your vineyard?
The new airport at Yantai is only about 20 minutes from the castle, and obviously flights are a bit strange at the moment. But normally we have direct flights from Hong Kong and Shenzhen into Yantai, so it's pretty convenient to get to.
Okay.
So you're most welcome when we have you can stay in the Scottish castle, and we have a nice we have a good chef there.
Oh, great, yeah. How do we come? You got website? How do we?
Yes, treatyport.com.
Okay, treatyport.com. Right.
Yeah, it's like on the label.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Yeah,
welcome. And the best time to come, in my personal view, is the spring or the autumn. So May, June, or sort of September, October is the best time.
Okay, lovely. Good to remember that.
Yeah.
Looking forward to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Welcome. 欢迎欢迎.
So I guess your tour can be multilingual or something.
Oh, of course, yeah. We have a Taiwanese manager there, and the chef is actually German trained, so it's quite an international crowd.
Oh, lovely. Are you based? You are long term. You live in China, or?
I lived in China for many years. As it happens, today I'm in the West Country. I'm having difficulty with getting visa back into China at the moment. But
I see. Understand that.
Yeah, I think for our next food and wine trip to China, we have another nice winery on the agenda.
Definitely.
Oh, yeah. Good.
Great, wonderful. Today is a very special day, the Double Ninth Festival, and it's lovely Jenny sharing with us her knowledge about nice Chinese wine regions, Shandong and Shanxi, and about this festival. And it's a very nice surprise to have Chris joining us. Yeah. I don't know, otherwise that will be in the marketing message. But that's a very kind, very nice surprise. Lovely meeting you. Lovely to meet everybody. Hugh and Jane from Portugal, and your friends from Canada, from Australia, and Martin, Trudy, and your friends, and Yan Ping and your husband from London, many other friends who haven't opened their video yet. And we have more and more people really falling in love with nice wine and also the stories, the history, the culture behind them. Oh, this is getting very exciting. And from day one, really from July time for Bill and I, we never miss one session. So every 2 weeks on Sunday, so 8 o'clock. Get the wine ready, get everything ready to the screen.
We'll be there, Ginger. Don't worry. We'll be there.
Okay.
Good to see you there, Martin.
Yeah, you too, Bill.
You see the Janet sharing the dates. Next session, 8th November. We look forward to seeing you all, 8 o'clock, having some more wines from Beijing, Tianjin, and Hebei province.
Yeah, so next time we're doing Hebei and Beijing, around the capital region, really. And in our mixed case, we also have wines from the Silk Road regions of Xinjiang and Ningxia, right? So if you would like to get the wines, they are available from the Cambridge China Center. So hopefully you'll join us next time when we go through our mixed.
Cheers from Portugal.
Cheers.
Okay.
Thank you, Janet. Thank you very much.
Thank you.